Havasu. Welcome. This is Coffee with the Mayor and City Manager. Today is Friday, June 5th, 2020. We're joined today by City Manager Jess Knudsen. Welcome. And we also have Dan Doyle. You know, a lot sure has happened since the last time we met. And most recently, the actions that caused the tragic death of George Floyd, which are hard to comprehend and awful. Our thoughts are with Mr. Floyd's family. The outcry of the American people is being heard across this nation. It's time that we start to heal. Lake Havasu City is fortunate to be a special place that brings us together, even though it's trying to tear us apart and to divide us. We are served by the finest men and women in law enforcement led by Chief Doyle. The Chief is here with us today, and he's going to talk about the planned peaceful protests in our city. Chief Doyle, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to address everybody on this topic. A few days ago, we received information that a local individual was wanting to have a protest, a peaceful protest here in Lake Havasu City. There's been a lot of information going around on a permit being issued and should the city issue a permit or not. Well, this is an event. This is obviously a constitutionally protected right to assemble. We're not shutting down any streets. We're not blocking any businesses. We're not impeding anybody in any way. So the young man that is organizing this, he is a local. He's from Havasu, went to school here. He's not somebody from the outside. He initially submitted the paperwork for a permit. When the city reviewed the paperwork, we realized that this was an event that did not require a permit. So we did meet with the gentleman and went over his planned event. And obviously, again, they have the right to assemble. And during our meeting with him, he really stressed that he was attempting to put on a very peaceful protest with no intention of harming anybody or any businesses. Since then, we've received information of some other groups that are joining in and participating in it also. We are meeting with all people involved, talking to them, explaining the law, explaining what is allowed, what's not allowed. They can't obstruct businesses. They can't prevent people from accessing businesses. They can't obstruct the roadway. They can't stop vehicles. They can't obstruct the sidewalk and not allow people to pass. As long as it's a peaceful protest, they're fine, and they have a constitutional right to do so. And we will protect that constitutional right. There's been a lot of rumors flying around, and we have spent a considerable amount of time running down rumors and just trying to validate anything. We've received rumors from people calling in to say somebody's stockpiling bricks to be used. When we ran that down, it was a pallet of bricks that were delivered to a construction site to be used. That wasn't a stockpile for a riot. We've received word that in Kingman, they located glass jars full of fuel to be used in the protest and bricks. We contacted Kingman Police Department, and they never discovered anything like that, and they have no information on anything of the sort. We've received rumors of busloads of Antifa members being bussed in. We've confirmed none of that. We've not seen that. It is interesting to note that leading up to the Kingman protests early in the week, they were inundated by rumors of busloads of Antifa coming into town, and they did not find that to be the case. So a lot of these rumors are circulating. The same thing is happening here, and we're getting the same rumors that Kingman was getting leading up to their protests. So what have we done to prepare for this event? Obviously, we've got all hands on deck for Saturday. A lot of our officers canceled vacation, and everybody that's here is going to be out working. We are prepared. We've been coordinating with surrounding agencies. We just had a big meeting yesterday with representatives from all the agencies came in. Kingman, Bullhead, Sheriff's Department, us, San Bernardino County Sheriffs that border us, our fire department, our ambulance company. Everybody's been supporting each other. We've worked with the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff's Department's working with all the agencies. So we got a tremendous amount of collaboration that is occurring. We're also monitoring all activities. So we're meeting with everybody involved, anybody that's coming out and saying they're going to be putting on another event, or they're going to be reaching out, and we're talking to them and just making sure everybody understands what is allowed and what is not allowed. So the most important thing is, remember, kind of keeping in mind what the police purpose is in this whole thing. Our purpose is to keep the peace. We're here to protect the citizens and property of Lake Havasu City. We're also going to be protecting everybody's constitutional rights, as long as they keep their activities lawful. The police department is not going to tolerate any illegal activity. I've been receiving numerous calls of people asking, are we going to allow riots? Are we going to pull back? They've been watching a lot of the news on what's happening in major metropolitan areas around the country and are very concerned. And I think rightly so. I think that concern is genuine. But I can assure everybody, we don't give up an inch of Lake Havasu City. We don't let one building, one car, one person get injured. That's not going to happen in Lake Havasu City. We're not going to let it happen, and we are prepared to handle this.
Thank you, Chief. We appreciate your department's response and your leadership in Lake Havasu City. It's very important, and I'm glad that you were able to join us this morning on Coffee with the Mayor and City Manager to update our citizens on the activities. So I know you have a busy morning, so thank you for joining us, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Bye.
All right. So the Coffee with the Mayor and City Manager is brought to you via Facebook Live and Zoom. Generally, we're in a nice gathering place, meeting around the community, showcasing different facilities or governmental entities that are available for taxpayers throughout our community. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we've been brought to virtual. So this is our second virtual Coffee with the Mayor and City Manager. And so you heard just a few minutes ago, again, today's Friday, June 5th, from the chief about Lake Havasu City's response to the peaceful protests that are planned in Lake Havasu City, and the robust plan that the chief has to protect our citizens going forward. Then what we generally do is we talk about topics of interest to Lake Havasu City, and then we'll open it up and answer any questions that our citizens have. You can comment below, and although we are not going to answer them till towards the end of the program, we'll still get to all of those questions that we get. So again, the reason that brings us virtual is the COVID-19 pandemic, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Just to give you a snapshot of where we stand with local numbers at this point, is in Lake Havasu City, there are now 88 confirmed cases in the Lake Havasu City area, and tragically, there are 9 deaths of COVID-19. We'll talk a little bit about kind of our strategy and what we did throughout this pandemic and are continuing to do to protect the health and safety of our citizens. And early on, we had to determine what our barometer was going to be. And because the city doesn't hire or staff a physician or a health expert, we had to rely on the experts that were available to us, which included Dr. Kara Christ, who is the director of the Arizona Department of Health Services and the Mojave County Department of Public Health. So we decided that we would follow the CDC guidance and the governor's executive orders. And so we have done just that. So as the governor would issue an executive order, you might see different closures or different reactions in our community based on the words that were provided in the governor's executive orders. We interfaced on a daily basis initially, and then a weekly basis as we were further into the pandemic with the governor's office, so that we could help provide guidance and strategy to the governor as he was making difficult decisions that impacted citizens across Arizona, and certainly citizens and businesses here in Lake Havasu City. As many of you know, the governor has lifted the stay-home order in Arizona as of May 1st, and slowly has restarted the economy with the opening of businesses at different intervals. And just this last week, the superintendent of public instruction and the governor have announced plans and guidance for school reopenings. But that guidance has been given to your elected school board, who will be making decisions as they impact Lake Havasu City. we're still 100% focused on the health and safety of our citizens as we continue to navigate through the pandemic. Although the stay-home order has been lifted due to COVID-19, we still have the virus within our community, and we need to obviously respond accordingly. And so at this point, we encourage our citizens and visitors to be mindful of others, continue to practice good hygiene by washing your hands, not touching your face with unclean hands. Most importantly, staying in or staying home if you're not feeling well or you're sick. And so if that means you are one of our citizens that work here in Lake Havasu City, to stay home and not go to work, or if you're a citizen that is moving about the community to go to the pharmacy or the doctors or a grocery store or another opportunity through our community, if you're not feeling well, stay in. We know that is one way to stop the spread of the virus. Also, if you have comorbidities or immune compromised, to take additional precautions to protect you and your family as we continue to navigate through the pandemic. Jess, do you have any thoughts about the COVID-19 and our response? I know you and I were working hand in hand with the rest of the council as we navigated through this. So,
yeah, I know certainly a lot's happened. Every now and then you reflect back on where we were last month or a couple of weeks ago, even, and things change very, very rapidly. And it's been a month now since we spoke to everybody through the virtual coffee with the mayor and manager, and I guess a few things have happened since then to maybe update everybody. And the last time that we met, we were on the verge of opening up the dog parks and restrooms. So I mean that was a month ago. So this wasn't too long. So we've, as you indicated, Mayor, we're attuned to the barometer and how we match up with our regional partners and the experts that we rely on for information and for to implement those regional decisions and then take a look at some of the local decisions. So since that time, we've seen the park amenities open, the ramadas, the restrooms, those types of things. We had lap swimming for the aquatic center. We opened that on May 18th for lap swimming. Started introducing some programs with swim lessons but with all these openings come with safeguards. So for swim lessons, for example, that's the parents that's in the water with the child, and it's the instructor that's coaching those activities to lessen any touching and those types of things. We now are we open registration just this week for our summer kids camp. Normally we have 600 kids that participate in our summer kids camp at our local schools. So that's the city's Parks and Recreation Department that puts on that program, and our partners at the schools allow us to utilize those facilities. It's a great thing for parents in the community because there's activities and to engage the kids and lots of fun things. And the kids always walk away from a great experience, and it's a true value to the parents as well. Again, so 600 is what we historically do every year. This year we had to take a look at it and what do we do during these times to make sure that people feel comfortable, people are safe, and we're doing our part. So we've restricted. We went from 600 kids to 135 kids, and we've registrations, and we've spread that out over 3 schools. Each within those schools, furthermore, the kids are separated in classrooms. So there's nine participants and one staff, and we do the best to ensure that there's no interaction between those small sets of kids. So lots of activities were canceled, but that we would normally do. But we have a vent of staff that are coming up with the things that for them to do and to make it an enjoyable experience for everybody. So we're threading that needle between safety and still trying to provide a program, a quality program for the kids and that value for the parents. So some of those things are happening. We're looking now on Monday, June 8th, will be the opening of the aquatic center for open swim. We're restricting the number of individuals that can enter the pool, and we're doing 2 separate shifts. So for a couple hours, we'll open up the pool. We'll cap it so we're with levels that are safe, and then we'll close the pool. We'll sanitize everything, and then reopen it again for another couple hour experience for the kids. So we're trying our best to remain vigilant, like you said, The virus still exists out there. We're getting lots of, every day is a little bit different. So was it a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we did the testing blitz. It was on May 16th here in Lake Havasu City. We had 377 tests that were conducted, and there was 3 positive tests, but only 1 for Lake Havasu City. So that many tests that were conducted, and we had one positive test for Lake Havasu City. And then we experienced the news from the Mojave County Department of Health Services or Public Health yesterday with 11 new cases for Lake Havasu City. So as we slowly reopen through the state, the country, and obviously Lake Havasu City, we got to still have to be vigilant and take the necessary steps. And so as a city, we're always trying to do just that, provide value and experience and services to the public, but do so in a safe, responsible manner.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. And we're also, as part of that process, we'll be having we actually had a special meeting yesterday of the council that was open to the public. And then our first regular council meeting will be this Tuesday, and that will be open to the public, and the council will all be in person. The staff will still visit us via Zoom so that we can have social distancing. We'll have the chairs spread out in a way inside the council chambers. And we'll also continue to be taking public input during our public hearings and call to the public via email, where citizens can email cityclerk@lhcaz.gov. Again, that's cityclerk@lhcaz.gov. And if you could email that email address 1 hour prior to any of our council meetings, we will read that into the record either at the call to the public, or if it's for a public hearing item, we'll read it into the record at that time for those citizens that don't feel comfortable coming into a group gathering. But again, we will be having our live council meetings and we'll have the council there, as well as opportunities for the public to join us. You can continue to watch the council meeting live on Channel 4, or also on the website at lhcaz.gov/TV. And so we're excited to be able to get back together. But, as Jess said, we still ask that citizens take caution and understand the ways that make sense for them to protect themselves and their families. So we'll continue to remain focused on public health in Lake Havasu City. And one of the comments that we get quite often during this process is the impact of visitors and what visitors look like and what that element adds. And so early on during the pandemic, we did have a statement where we asked visitors to stay home during the stay home order that was issued by Governor Ducey. The health and safety of our citizens was at risk. And as we've learned more about how this spreads and how to prevent it and those types of things, and as the governor has lifted the stay home order and has slowly reopened the Arizona economy, we've seen an influx of visitors to our area. And so we continue to ask visitors just to be mindful that 55,000 people call Lake Havasu City home. This paradise is our home. And we're asking our visitors to be mindful of that, be respectful, practice physical distancing when allowed, and be kind. And we've said that multiple times throughout this pandemic, and we continue to do that. You may have seen an article from the Wall Street Journal that highlighted this impact of visitors across the country to very popular tourism areas. And Lake Havasu City is obviously one of those areas that are seeing an influx of visitors during the pandemic and as we reopen the economy. But there are other places across the country that are experiencing the same thing, such as the Outer Banks in North Carolina, some places in Texas, and how that is impacting in that careful balance. And we continue to manage through that environment, all while staying very focused on the health and safety of our citizens. Again, working with our partners at the Mojave County Department of Public Health and receiving guidance from the governor's office and the Arizona Department of Health Services. So you can be rest assured that we're fully focused on it, and the health and safety of our citizens is a top priority. Now, as part of the COVID-19, there was a lot of federal relief efforts that our senators and congressmen and women went to work alongside the president to be able to provide relief to citizens and also to businesses across the United States. The most prominent is the CARES Act, and the CARES Act is is the monies that provided our citizens with direct relief of $1,200 for individuals that earn less than $75,000 a year, and also for family members. It also provided the PPP loans, or the Paycheck Protection loans that you hear a lot about on the news. And it also gave governors money that was to do direct relief to cities. So Arizona received funding from the CARES Act. Cities and counties that had over 500,000 people in population, so there's I believe 4 or 5 in the state of Arizona, that got direct relief from the federal government. The rest of the money was given to the governor. And about a week and a half ago, the governor released how he was going to distribute those monies to the towns and counties, actually, across the state of Arizona. And Lake Havasu City is a recipient, of course, as a city. It was determined based on population. And so one of the reasons for our census plug real quick, fill out the census. They used census data to determine this. But Lake Havasu City was awarded $6.4 million of the CARES Act money. A couple of important things to note: that these are one-time monies that are used for to shore up local governments to ensure that we can provide the services that our citizens request of us and need of us. And so, Jess, if you want to talk a little bit about that, it's still in the discussion points, and we don't have the money in the bank. It's allocated to Lake Havasu City. So, Jess, if you want to talk a little bit about that point.
Yeah, sure. Certainly, Mayor, thank you. So as you indicated, there was through that CARES Act, $6.4 million filters through the federal government, through the governor's office to Lake Havasu City. Those aren't dollars that we have in our back pockets at this time, but all indications show that it is coming our way. So when we talk about budgets, it is important to identify 2 distinct revenue sources. One is one-time dollars, and the other revenue sources is ongoing dollars. So one-time dollars, which obviously this is one of those things. We don't expect those dollars to come again, hopefully, as it was tied to the pandemic. And then obviously ongoing is the things we see in terms of fees or property taxes, those types of things that allow us to pay for, salaries and officers, public safety, and those types of things, right? So when we look at this injection of cash coming into Lake Havasu City, we need to be cognizant in terms of how we spend those dollars. And from where I stand, there is no shortage of needs. So this existing budget year was the first year that we bought patrol cars for our police department. That was the first time in, I believe, 3 years that occurred. So that is something that needs to continue to happen. So these dollars could go towards some of those patrol cars. We have a fireboat out in the channel that's utilized by our fire department that has 2 pumps on it. One's operating right now, and it's an old aging boat. We have a few police boats that are out there that were purchased used from the Mojave County Sheriff's office years ago, and so those are other needs that exist. I think it was 2015-16, Lake Havasu City purchased 5 fire engines. So when we bought those all at one time, what that does is sets us up where we would be put in a bad position if those all age at the same time. Then we have to purchase all those engines at the same time. So maybe we need to, we do need to establish some type of a schedule for replacement of our fire vehicles and our engines. So you start talking about some of those needs, and we quickly find ourselves spending the bulk majority of those dollars. But all indications to us was it was a repayment for the expenses tied to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that these would largely, not entirely, but largely be used for public safety one-time purchases, or to offset personnel costs of overtime and all the things that are tied to the last couple of months. So in the end, these are just some random thoughts coming from a city manager. But what we need to do is engage the public, engage the council on exactly what the use of these dollars were. So we just have to remember that these are one-time dollars to be spent on one-time uses, and largely spent on public safety, but not entirely. So the plan right now is we'll come to council here in the next 2 months or so, and then put together a plan based on input from the chiefs and staff. And then we'll engage the council in a public setting and engage the residents to identify how how those dollars would be spent. Not all at once, but putting together a plan over the course of time on what's the best use of those dollars. So right now, that's where we're heading.
Yeah. Thank you, Jess. Yes, so the governor got information from the federal government of how those funds needed to be distributed. And the governor really was very mindful and thoughtful on how to distribute those monies to cities, towns, and counties across the state of Arizona in a way that provided the most flexibility to those cities, towns, and counties. And so we're thankful for that. He engaged with many mayors across the state of Arizona and county supervisors to be able to devise a plan that allowed those to come through. And as just mentioned, the idea is through public safety, but not exclusive to public safety. And that allows the governor to be able to check his box when he's letting the federal government know that those have been distributed to local cities and towns, and then obviously in the direct benefit of the local taxpayers. So we'll engage our citizens and our council on how to most effectively use those funds as we move forward. As we go into talking about money, we've been working on the budget. So if the pandemic wasn't enough as we were navigating through this, it also happened right at the height of budget season. So the most uncertain time in the year with a pandemic bring the most certainty to a budget for this next fiscal year. Jess and his team have been working really hard with a lot of unknowns, not unlike many of you that own businesses or run households that have had very uncertain and very anxious times over the last few months. But we've been focused on the budget, and there's been many conversations about what the budget looks like. And in municipal budgeting, which is just a little bit different than maybe private sector budgeting or even household budgeting, is that everything you can't spend the money unless it's budgeted. So we're having to have all of these unknowns, such as we didn't have the CARES Act money as a known quantity. We knew that it was out there. We didn't know how much it was. We didn't know when we would receive it. But there's a lot of those unknown grants that may be coming available because of the unknown still related to this pandemic and what that looks like. So you'll see a budget that has been developed that has more revenues than expenses in certain areas. And you might have heard during our public budget hearings that there's Plan B items and that there's money built in for flexibility so that we can accept these grants, because if we don't have those monies identified to be able to accept those, it would be a missed opportunity for our local taxpayers. And so Jess and his team have done a fantastic job going through all of these different components of unknowns to be able to put together a budget that's going to allow us to continue to focus on the priorities of Lake Havasu City, the priorities of you, our local citizens, and the services that we provide to you. And Jess, I'll let you talk a little bit about that process and how you came up with it. The next action of the council will be this coming Tuesday at our council meeting, where we have to, by statute, adopt a tentative budget, which basically fixes the top line numbers going forward for final adoption at the last meeting of June. So, Jess, if you want to talk a little bit about the process you and your team went through.
Yeah, so this is a process that's starts in December. So once we adopt the budget and get that going here shortly, we'll be working on next year's budget. So the point there is that we work far in advance of June to put this budget together, and at that time we're utilizing past information to make the estimates in terms of revenues for basically we're trying to plan how we're going to spend dollars 18 months from now. And that's always a little bit of a tricky process in terms of what that looks like for the financial resources for the city. And then we go through all of what we experience with the closures of businesses and restaurants and all the things that we experience here in Lake Havasu City, and then trying to get a better gauge on where we're at. So, this year's budget, I'll just be frank and forthright, as always, is that this is the weirdest budget that I've ever seen. And I think that if you talk to other city managers in Arizona or across the country, they're going to say the same thing about their budgets, is that we need to put together something that allows us to prepare for best and worst case scenarios. So we identified when we put this budget together, when we first brought it to council about 2 months ago, when we start looking at some of these numbers, our projections were a 20% decrease in revenues moving forward. At that time was at the height of the closures, and nobody knew exactly what the next weeks and months and or albeit days we're going to look like. So, and then we experienced the governor's direction on slowly reopening the Arizona and the economy, and we're seeing a lot more occurring there. So now we take a look at things and see the restaurants and the small businesses are opening. And people are very confident. They're out there spending dollars and back to work and so forth and so on. So then now we have to make sure that we have a plan in place to do good things and provide good services to the community if and when those dollars continue to come in. So it's a process that we're working on some unknowns, and in the end, we have to be frugal. We have to be vigilant. And we have to put together a plan in place that we're using those taxpayer dollars wisely. So we've gone through a couple of work sessions with council and engaged many meetings and to put together what we have here. And then, like as you indicated, Mayor, on Tuesday, the tentative budget will go before the council, and then the following meeting in June, the last meeting in June, which is the fourth Tuesday in June, it'll go to before council for final approval. And then once that occurs, we send that number, that top line number that includes all the funds, all the revenues, the whole budget, all of our anticipated expenses and revenues. We send that number to the state of Arizona Department of Revenue, and at that point we're limited. We cannot spend more than that top dollar. So, and then of course what we do is then we start that budget process and with the new fiscal year, and we manage those dollars wisely. It's important to know that just because those dollars are in the budget doesn't mean those dollars are going to be spent to that tune. So we're always looking at new and better ways of doing things and more efficient ways of accomplishing the tasks required to provide good services to our residents. So does that help a little bit, Mayor?
Yes, yeah, thank you. That's a good summary of what it was, and I think your description, although not a technical term, of the weirdest budget that ever existed is very true. And And I think I may have misspoke when I was introducing the topic, and and I think you hit on it right at the end, is that we'll have more expenses than revenues, because if we need to be able to spend those, if the resources are there, we have to have it in there the way municipal budgets are working. So thank you to you and your team for all the hard work. It's a very odd and trying time, and to be able to put those together. Well, one of the top priorities for the council for about 18 months now has been a positional analysis, and that is where you basically take a look at the entire compensation platform for city staff citywide, and take a look at that and make sure that we're paying our team members and our employees at market wages, and we are able to attract and retain the best and the brightest to be able to provide the great services that they do to all of our citizens each and every day. So the council has had a really strong focus on this, and wanted to understand what that looked like, what it might cost, how we could do that. And it's been about an 18-month process. So I'll go back and from a history standpoint, and then just I'll turn it over to you to talk about current and going forward. But when this started to come up, we were having some compaction or compression issues. You may have heard a lot about that in the local news, how it was impacting some of our public safety and our water, wastewater, our parks maintenance, public works professionals throughout the city. And basically that is during the Great Recession, wages had to be frozen. And like many of our budgets at home had to be frozen. It just was not another option. But what had happened is then by freezing those for several years, you would hire a new person to join the team, and they could be making the same or more than someone that has been providing 5, 6, 7, 8 years of service to the city. And it became unequitable. And what it was doing is leading to people coming to Lake Havasu City, getting trained in whatever their trade or profession was, or certifications, and then they would go to other communities at higher rates. And so we knew this was a challenging and troubling issue for us, and we want to obviously retain the best and the brightest, as I mentioned earlier, across all levels of our government, and ensure that we're providing the great services to the citizens. To do that, we had to take a look at what that was and how do you fix this in a very systematic approach versus doing Band-Aid fixes that were immediate and may have long-term consequences that would impact the taxpayers of our city or impact the team members of our city. So we sought to do a positional analysis through a third-party independent firm. But in order to do that, we had to plan the monies to do that. So the RFP was written up just to start right at the beginning of this current fiscal year. So that was one of the very first contracts that was awarded by council that started in July 1. And then it would be basically a 6 to 9 month plan to be able to determine what that would look like, and then what type of implementation strategies that we could do. Going forward, based on that time frame I just mentioned to you, it was right during the height of COVID when all of these pieces were supposed to happen. And so it would be public conversations and group gatherings and all of those types of things. And frankly, we had priorities with COVID and ensuring the health and safety of our citizens at the time, all the while trying to put together the weird or awkward budget that was going along at the same time. So the timing got a little bit off kilter, but a couple of the actions that the council has done and key city staff throughout this process is throughout the last several budget cycles, all employees that were eligible for a step increase received that if they were eligible for it. But the council, you may recall, looked at what their wages looked like, and they haven't been changed in 26, 27 years. I think 1993, if my memory serves me. And we decided, it is something that needs to be addressed, but not until positional analysis is addressed. We also have 3 employees that work directly for the mayor and city council, which are employees that work directly for us. The rest of the city employees work through the city manager's office and report at some level to Jess as the city manager. Those 3 employees forewent raises for now 2 years as we worked through the positional analysis. So we did that as a unified front to show that we're very committed to positional analysis. And we want to ensure that we do retain the best and the brightest, but we do it in a systematic way that is going to be long-term for the health and well-being of our city and also in the best interest of our taxpayers. So by way of introduction, with that, Jess, I'll turn it over to you to talk about current and future on what that looks like.
I appreciate that. It was a very good summary in terms of why we're doing it in the first place, and then the goal with everything that we do is to be able to attract and retain the best and brightest employees. So I think that's the most important thing that we're trying to accomplish with all this. So that said, now we got to figure out a way how that's going to impact the city's budgets and resources. And so we were taking a close look at that. Initially when staff presented the budget to council, we talked about pushing this off, and the plan for the last 2 years has been July 1st, 2020. And so with great pains, the staff went to council, pushed this off for 6 months as part of the budget process, and then look at this and reevaluate after January 1st. And then now we're seeing some initial things come back in terms of the CARES Act funding and a rebound of the economy. There's still some hesitations, trepidation that exists there, but we're able to look at this in a little bit different light. So I'm working hard to see if we can move that up and somewhere between not July 1st, not January 1st, but maybe let's find a way to move that up a little further so that we can get that done as part of this budget process. So working very hard on that. We talk. It's not just about the putting in dollars that identify increased pay or say more about identifying what that market pay is for the employees. It allows us to attract and retain public safety and employees up and down throughout that organization. But those expenses from a budget and perspective they're ongoing, and they have ripple effects throughout the budget. So those ripple effects, if you increase the wage of a position, that's going to impact overtime. That's going to impact disability. That's going to impact workman's comp and pension and other costs that are tied to it. So it's the dollars spent to implement this are much more far-reaching than just what's identified on an employee's paycheck. So, and then more so, we have to look at what are the ongoing costs for future years. So there's a cost for this year, and then next year, that's a cost that continues. So it's not, you don't make a wage adjustment and then take it away the next year. That's a wage adjustment that will continue. One of the reasons for that we're doing what we're doing as well with the positional analysis is also is impacting the price tag of the positional analysis. Right now with the city, we have roughly 420 to 430 full-time employees within Lake Havasu City. Right now, 75 of those employees are topped out. They haven't received a wage or an increase for, in some cases, for many years. So as we identify what that market rate is, then they're on a range scale, minimum and a maximum wage or a salary that exists. And that employee's been topped out for so long, and that scale moves, now that employee has got room to grow in future years. So, but then there's a cost to that. So those 75 employees, the vast majority of those, if not all, would now receive or be eligible to receive an increase in next year and in future years. So all this is just a boring conversation to let you know that there's a whole lot of detail that's behind the scenes, and trying to make sure that we're looking at all this very closely, and that we set ourselves up for success for this budget year, next budget year, and for honestly for future generations. So we want to make good decisions now so that we have easier decisions to make in the future years, whether it's by myself or yourself, Cal, or whoever sits in these chairs in future years.
Yeah, thank you for that. So it still remains a top priority of the council, and the council has been really focused on ensuring that we can get this done. We thank Jess and his team for working hard at all of the different scenarios. And again, we didn't know when the initial parts of the budget were being created, because we were right in the height of the pandemic, having a historical widespread closure of businesses. When Lake Havasu City relies primarily on sales tax, which sales tax can only be collected if people are transacting business throughout our community. But indications are looking as if we'll come back. The president this morning was announcing some really positive jobs numbers across the nation, and we're expecting similar things here in Lake Havasu City. So it's going to be an ongoing movement, but we again remain committed to the citywide. So not department by department, but citywide, which would address, of course, all city employees throughout our organization, and allow us to retain the best and the brightest, but it also will take care of the 3 employees that work directly for the council, and then the council discussion. So that way it's one comprehensive program instead of piecemealing it over multiple years or multiple subjects. Of course, all done in the best interest of Lake Havasu City for the future. Another item that's impactful to the budget is the irrigation and drainage district. And we recently, at our last regular meeting, had an item, I almost called it a work session, but it was in our regular council meeting. But it seemed like a work session with the amount of information that was given to us about what that looks like. So the IDD, or again, the Irrigation and Drainage District, which we've talked about several times in this forum with the Coffee with the Mayor and City Manager, is the initial kind of first government of Lake Havasu City, if you will. Started all the way back in the 60s with Robert McCulloch when he was just forming our community. And it was an opportunity to be able to fund water and wastewater for this very new community here on the river. And he created the Irrigation and Drainage District, which was a per lot or per acre tax, a property tax, again, to fund that water, wastewater infrastructure. Lake Havasu City was incorporated by vote of the people in 1978. The IDD was supposed to dissolve at that time, which the dissolution is part of that vote from 1978, but it couldn't dissolve until the debt that the IDD had was paid off or expired. So over all these years, and subsequent councils from many councils ago, long before us, refinanced that debt to continue to be able to collect the IDD funds. The IDD contributes about $5.7 million to the fund to provide water, wastewater services to our citizens. And so with the district getting ready to dissolve in 2022, which is when the debt will be paid off, that $5.7 million needs to be made up in some fashion. And so we've talked over the last probably 18 to 24 months in these forums and others about what shall we do about that. And we've talked about other districts. We've talked about doing something with the rates where you pay based on usage, which we already do, but including this additional 5.7 million and what that might look like. And so again, in our last council meeting, we had an update from a firm that was telling us what the options were. IDDs, or irrigation and drainage districts, are no longer. It's not a mechanism that can be done in the state of Arizona by state statute. So we had to determine what type of platform there is. And the way that we do that is by having these conversations with our citizens on what makes sense for our community. What is it that you would like to see? I say this all the time, but I work for you, the citizens of Lake Havasu City, as do my colleagues on the council. And we work through you to be able to pass good policy that's going to set Lake Havasu City up for the future. But with that being said, Jess, if you'd like to maybe talk about some of the options that were presented or kind of what that looks like from an operational standpoint on how we move forward.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So what we're trying to identify options, and we're trying to engage the public and the community discussions to see what's the best route to move forward. And so that's what that kind of kicked that off a little bit in terms of what are the options. And so we had a firm come in. It's thanks you to Mark Reeder, who's a financial advisor in the past for the city. So at no cost to the city, which is the best type of advice to get from a professional that deal with this and throughout Arizona, and with a firm of attorneys to take a look at what's legal, what's not legal, what's possible, what's not possible. And again, what the goal is here is that right now through your property tax assessment, if you pull down your property tax bill, on there, you're going to see a line item that says IDD, or irrigation and drainage district. So what the concept is now is that expires in July 1st, 2022. So, and the city right now collects those dollars, and some, like you said, Cal, it's $5.7 million. That money goes directly into just for water services, to pay for and support for water services. So that's the water lines, the water tanks, our ability to pull water from the Rainy Well site over at London Beach Park. And for the rest of us as citizens, that will be able to turn on the faucet to cook with and shower with, and all those other necessities that are required. So those dollars go directly into that. It's a nonprofit. Those dollars don't go to any other use. What the city, all we need to do is to make sure that we're collecting the dollars needed to provide that service. Nothing less, obviously, and nothing more is equally as important. And then in planning for future years as we replace equipment and our water treatment plant and those types of things too. So with that going away, what do we do? So Mr. Reeder came back and we present those options to the public and to the council. And there's the first option is that we could reissue debt and kick this can down the road and extend the life of this IDD for another 5 or 10 years. That's one option. And that's questionable in terms of the legality of that. Some will say yes, and some will look at that and say, is that really the intention of what that drainage district was supposed to do in the first place? And again, it's no longer in state statute. It's a mechanism that no longer exists. So what do we do? And if that's not the option, or not that's one of the options, I guess, is let's create a new district is some of the conversations that we had in the public. So you have to go dig into the state statutes and say, okay, what kind of district could you create that could do something similar to what the irrigation and drainage district did? There's some mechanisms there, but nothing that's identified solely for water delivery services or those types of things. There's districts out there that are called community facilities districts, or CFDs, and they became very, very popular in Arizona about 15 years ago and have ever since. Those districts are set up to essentially pay for roads, infrastructure, the creation, for the most part, of these big HOAs that are developed throughout Arizona. A lot of those are done by, through CFDs, or community facilities district. That's one option, but it does not. It allows for the raising of about $2 million, which we're short on that. And then that governing board is not the council. It's a group that includes some council and some private sector folks in the construction industry. So, and then those. So that's one option. The other one is a revitalization district that's out there that's used, I think, in one community, Prescott Valley maybe, and used to enhance the downtown revitalization. So those are two districts that could possibly serve as a mechanism don't quite match up with what we're doing. And then that last option is so the $5.7 million goes away in terms of that property tax assessment for the IDD. So maybe we have to look at maybe raising the rates so that we're breaking even on this endeavor. So 5.7 goes away over here, and then it pops up over here, and then we can utilize the rates to pay for the monthly rates to pay for that that water service, and then we can more closely tie the customer's usage to the amount that's paid to support the water service efforts. So July 1st, 2022, IDD goes away, and so we're looking at some options that have been presented, and in the meantime, staff will grab some more details and present those at future meetings in terms of might be some more information on those districts and exactly what would those rates have to be for us to look at this a little closely. And is there a different philosophy in terms of how the rates work? So we hear some people love winter averaging in Havasu, some people don't like it. Is there rates that could better impact our ability to motivate our customers and ourselves to conserve water? All those things are part of this conversation as well too. So look in future months, we'll continue these conversations in the public. And in the meantime, we want to hear from you.
Thank you, Jess. So we'll continue to have the conversation about the IDD. If you have thoughts or comments, feel free to reach out to us and let us know, or my colleagues on council, and let's talk that through. And we'll continue to have this community dialogue. All right, we're getting to the part of the program that is most important, which are your questions. So we'll be answering those in just a couple of minutes. But before we do have an upcoming election that's going to be occurring here in Lake Havasu City that you're hearing a lot about on the news at the national level. But we do have 3 council positions that will be available. And you're starting to see signs go up across the city already. Today's the official day, first day that signs can be placed throughout the community. So you'll see those for the next or through the election cycle at least. But we have 3 seats available. We have 6 candidates that are running. We have Mike Bonney is running. Nancy Campbell is running. Incumbent Gordon Grote will be running. Dave Armio, incumbent Vice Mayor David Lane will be running. And Cameron Moses are the 6 candidates that are vying for a seat. The primary election is on August 4th. It's moved up in Arizona. This is the first cycle that it's moved up by about 2 weeks. You'll be hearing and seeing a lot. And if you don't, those are the candidates. Go out and research and know that an election's coming up. And again, the primary is on August 4th. The legislature also sine die on May 26th. There's likely to be another special session, but great supporters of Lake Havasu City, our delegation from Mojave County, led by Senator Sonny Borelli, Representative Leo Biasucci, and Representative Regina Cobb, have done a great job, and we were on track to do some really great things this legislative session prior to the COVID-19 closing down the legislature, but we appreciate all of their hard work and everything that they've done. Generally, Senator Borelli and Representative Leo Biasucci would be with us for the coffee with the mayor and city manager when we are in person. So again, we thank them for all of that they've done and continue to do for Lake Havasu City. We'll end our official stuff with the census and why it's so important. We already know just from today's coffee, one of the most important reasons is the way that the CARES Act money was allocated to cities, towns, and counties was through U.S. Census data. But the census is still going on. It's been extended due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Lake Havasu City currently has a 60% response rate. So we're edging up there, which is really good. 45.1% is internet self-response. So if you have not received your postcard or letter in the mail, go online. It takes just a couple of minutes. I was able to do mine back in March, and it took me literally 5 minutes to answer the few questions that they needed. But it's so important for Lake Havasu City. It determines not only our representation in government. Arizona is expected to receive a minimum of 1 more U.S. Congress position, potentially 2, and that allows us to be represented in Washington, D.C. So it does that, but it also does funding and funding mechanisms. So these are taxes and fees and that we already pay either at the gas pump or through our income taxes or whatever that might look like. but the way that those monies are redistributed back to cities and towns so that they can be used for our local taxpayers, the ones that are paying the money, is through U.S. Census data. And so it's important that we get counted, you stand up and be counted, and do that and check the box for Lake Havasu City. It's very important. It also is on economic development, and a lot of site selectors and businesses relocate to a community based on population data, and they have to meet certain thresholds. So again, go online and fill that out. You actually could do it right now on the device you're watching us on, and you can have it done by the time we start answering your questions that you've been coming in. Jess, I think I touched on most of the high points on census, but is there anything additional on census?
No, I think that's it. And for all those that have already filled out the census, thank you so much for doing that. And if you engage some of your neighbors or others in the community to follow suit and do that as well too. So I guess the one other thing just to touch on is we hear sometimes like, there's no way I'm going to fill out the census because then they're going to have my information and track me and all these types of things too. So honestly, go take a look at that census question. So those questions are not intrusive at all. It's essentially asking for how many people live in your household. And at that point, that allows us to bring those tax dollars that you've already paid back into Lake Havasu City instead of going to Phoenix or some other area in Arizona. So it allows us to provide those services and do the best we can to limit the tax burden on our local citizens. So again, thank you for those that have, and go bug your neighbors and get them to do it too.
Yeah, thank you. So the census, just a little competitive information. So Havasu is at 60% response rate. Bullhead City is at 53.4%, and Kingman is at 71.1%, making the average from Mojave County at 53.5%. So let's get our numbers up there. Let's do this like Havasu. I know we can do it. So let's do that. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a few of the things our children in our community have had a crazy year, just like many of us, but the children that have these memories that last a lifetime with school years and end of school and all of those types of things, my heart goes out to them. But as part of our census, we did have a lot of interaction engagement with our local students. And they've done some fantastic pieces of art and coloring contests and some others. And they weren't able to showcase them in their schools because of the closures, but they are located down in the City Hall lobby. I had the pleasure of actually meeting a couple of them when they were coming to get their awards for being the winner, which I just so happened to be in the lobby at the time, which I was grateful for to be able to congratulate them. But congratulations to all of the winners, and thank you for participating. And our youth in Lake Havasu City are so amazing. We are so proud of you, and look forward to all the great things that you're going to do. All right, we are going to go through and start answering your questions. Feel free to do them. They're sending them our way. We'll answer them in the order that we received. But just by way of recap, today is Friday, June 5th, 2020. We are joined at the beginning of the coffee with the mayor and city manager by Chief Dan Doyle, who was talking about the plans for the peaceful protest in Lake Havasu City this weekend and his department's response and preparation for that, and gave us a very great update on how prepared and confident they are in the work that they do. So the first question that is coming through is what's your response with all of the negativity people are spreading about that? And my personal response and remains to be and always is be kind and check your facts. It does us no good by sharing information that we don't know to be true or making assumptions of things that are happening. The chief briefly went through some of the wild things that people are mentioning, such as buses coming here, all the way down to people naming license plates and where they're staying and what they're doing. And none of it's true. It's just not true. So be a good neighbor. Let's share factual information, and let's understand that we need each other. And Lake Havasu City is a very special place, a very engaged citizens. Let's stand for each other. Let's begin to heal together in Lake Havasu City. And that would be my message for the negativity. Moving on to the next question, but before I do that, I do want to introduce some of our elected officials that are joining us here this morning. Good morning to Vice Mayor David Lane, who's always in person with us, but he's here virtually with us. Thank you for being here. We appreciate all that you're doing. He led the LHC Resource Alliance during the height of the pandemic and continues to do so with our partners at the Havasu Community Health Foundation, the Better Business Bureau, the Lake Havasu Area Chamber of Commerce, and the United Way. So we appreciate all of your work, Vice Mayor Lane, and again, thank you for being here. And then also welcome Councilmember Donna McCoy. Thank you for being here. Again, always a pleasure to virtually see you, but always somebody that comes to our coffees, and thank you for your great service to Lake Havasu City. Our next question is, it's okay for more than...
Cal.
Oh,
and then, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just told that we also have Councilmember Jenny Koch. My information, I'm reading a phone, so if you see my eyes going up and down, I'm trying to keep track of all the things. So yeah, good morning to Councilmember Jenny Koch, another strong supporter of the Coffee with Mayor and City Manager, who always is attending in person as well. And thank you for your leadership in our community as well. So good morning to our elected officials. All right, moving to the next question is, so it's okay for more than 10 people to do this. I'm assuming do this as a peaceful protest, but the kids that want to graduate could not because of COVID. Why is that? So the first thing is that the CDC recommendation is no group gatherings over 10 people. It also is if you are in a position where you cannot social or physically distance, they do recommend face coverings for that. Those are the recommendations of the CDC. And as we explained early on, Lake Havasu City needed a barometer so that our citizens could understand what decisions Lake Havasu City was making, why they were making them, and what that looked like, and not have to second guess, and to give just a little bit of certainty in a very uncertain time by following the guidance of the CDC and the governor's executive orders. The school district is the one that makes the decisions for the local school, and they work and interface with the state superintendent of public instruction, and also they liaison with the governor's office as well. We know group gatherings is a way for active spread of COVID-19. That's why the recommendation is 10 or less. So as a community, we do not recommend these gatherings of more than 10 people. This is not a permanent event. This is a protected right under First Amendment to be able to peacefully assemble. So we still recommend at this point no group gatherings. The governor had a press conference just yesterday indicating that numbers in Arizona are going up. To be expected, increased testing has occurred, and also as the state is reopened, people are starting to gather again, which was an expectation that numbers would go, but hospital capacity is really what the objective was for the business closure. So it's not that it's being allowed or not allowed, but these are recommendations that we continue to share with folks. And group gatherings of 10 or more are discouraged and not within the recommendations of the CDC guidance. Jess, do you have any thoughts or additional comments on that?
No, I think, it's the difference between guidance and law and these types of things too. And, I'm guilty too. It's when you take a look around and you see what's happening in one location or one business or one component of what's happening in the community or in the country or somewhere else, and you go, well, why is that going on and not that? So honestly, these things don't make a whole lot of sense when you look at them all together. But nobody had a plan in this country and or on this planet and how we're going to move forward with these things. So it's pretty easy to kind of see the irony and some of the confusion that's out there and say, well, if that can happen, why can't that happen? And again, I'm guilty of it too as you look around and see these things. So we're just trying to make the best decisions that are in our control here at the city and doing the best that we can to protect ours. So there's other decisions that are out there made by private business, by the governors, by the president and CDC and all these things. Again, we're doing the best that we can. And, as we get late requests coming forward for different events that are coming up, there's no law out there that says you can't have more than 10 people or even 50 or these types of things too. So, we're trying to wade through these conversations, and in the end, what are you doing as an event organizer for some of these smaller functions to protect the public? And so that these are things that are happening right now. So as more people are in the public, what are we doing for those precautions to allow those things to continue to happen? So.
Thank you. I'm going to volley this one over to Jess, just for some of the detail pieces. Will the protest, the peaceful protest that's planned for Saturday, be happening all day? Where? McCulloch and Acoma, McCulloch and Lake Havasu Avenue. Which areas should we avoid if we wanted to avoid that area?
Yeah, so I think it's important that that there was again no permit issued by the city, but we've engaged some of our local residents that will be participating in a peaceful protest, and have indicated some of their plans to the city, and we're grateful for those conversations so that we're all coordinated and be able to have some expectations so that we can pass those messages on to the public. So a lot of this is going to be happening, kind of evolving with conversations that will continue up into the day. So we've heard from like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. in some cases, and some of those initial plans right now are to maybe park up here by McCulloch and Acoma, and then travel down McCulloch and into Lake Havasu Avenue or those whereabouts. So essentially, if you're asking what areas to avoid, again, no streets are blocked, no sidewalks are blocked, public access, access to public areas, access to private businesses, all of those things will maintain. That's what Chief Doyle spoke about earlier, is that we will protect the constitutional rights for the protesters, but at the same time, we're going to protect the life, safety, and property of our business owners and all of our residents in Lake Havasu City, all of them. So I think, but in terms of a little bit of more people in certain areas on tomorrow on Saturday, on the 6th, is going to be on McCulloch between Acoma and Lake Havasu Avenue, and spread out through some of those areas.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next question also has to do with the planned peaceful protest this weekend. Why would we allow this behavior right in town rather than somewhere where it won't bother business? Which, great question. But as Jess had mentioned and the chief mentioned earlier, this is not a permanent event. It's protected by your First Amendment rights in the Constitution. The Constitution is always the document that we're going to go by. And so we're at this point in a position that we're managing it. And I think the chief did a really great job this morning explaining what his team has been doing in order to prepare and be ready for this. So with the coordination of other agencies and working where the anticipated areas are going to be and talking to those folks, I am very comfortable with the mechanisms in which we'll be managing this. So it's not about us allowing one area or a different area. We're at this point managing through that. I don't know, Jess, if you have anything to add to that, or.
No, I think that sums it up right there too. I think that we're doing the best that we can for people to exercise their constitutional rights on all sides of all angles of every issue, whether it's today, tomorrow, or forever. That's what we do here at the city, and first and foremost, we're going to abide by and enforce and protect the Constitution and our rights that are identified in that Constitution.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Question actually changes the subject a bit. So instead of total positives over the last few months, it would be more informative to know how many are active. And so as we talked about the COVID-19 earlier in the coffee, we don't have health experts in Lake Havasu City. It's not under the purview of a city or the city structure. We have to rely on the information from the Arizona Department of Health Services and the Mojave County Department of Public Health. So COVID-19 is a reportable diagnosis. So a primary care physician or the like has to report any confirmed cases to the health department. The health department then does what you may have heard in the news or read about contact tracing or interviews. So they try to identify where the patient has been or maybe what other exposures could be related to that. And it's then reported as a confirmed case. So certainly when we report these numbers that we reported, which again in Lake Havasu City, there's now 88 confirmed positive cases, and then again, tragically including nine deaths. That is since the tracking began in our community, since the first patient was identified. And that's the data that we receive. Now, there is more data sets that are available to citizens to check daily. It's updated at 9 a.m. every day at the Arizona Department of Health Services website. You can check that out. You can go by zip code if they have, I believe it's over 10 confirmed cases per zip code, then there'll be data for that particular zip code. And then also Mojave County Department of Public Health has a really robust tool on their website that has some more data. But that's what is the standard across the nation and the globe right now is how to report these numbers. Certainly, of those 88, there are people that have recovered and are back to life. So it's not a function of the city reporting something different, but definitely understand where you're coming from on that question and your point there. So, Jess, I don't know if you have any thoughts, sir. All right. Moving on then to the next.
That one, Mayor. No,
okay, perfect. Yeah, moving on to the next question, same subject, and I'm going in order. I believe that they're at least coming into me. Is hospital capacity currently at, and specifically the ICU? Havasu Regional Medical Center is a private facility, so I can share some information that I know, but they're not required to provide me information. But again, as we mentioned, the whole objective with this state stay home order and the business closures was to build hospital capacity within the state of Arizona, including ventilator space, and also ensure that we had the proper personal protective equipment for medical providers and first responders across the state of Arizona. As those objectives have been met, we've been able to slowly reopen the economy, and Governor Ducey has lifted his stay-home order. Now, in Lake Havasu City, Havasu Regional Medical Center is a 171-bed facility. On a normal day, they were able to build their medical capacity to 250 and have approved plans with the Arizona Department of Health Services, again, ensuring that we have built that medical capacity. Now, each day is a little bit different in yesterday's numbers. And again, now this is just information I'm sharing with you that's public that we all get. Yesterday's numbers, 3 of the confirmed cases were hospitalized. I don't know because that information is not released if they're ICU hospitalized or in some other unit. But the health department does get reports directly. It's actually under executive order from the governor about what medical capacity is in the areas and then how shared resources would occur should there be a surge. So I hope that answers your question. That's as specific as the information that's provided to us, but we continue to monitor it on a regular basis to ensure that we have access for our citizens. By the nod of your head, Jess, I think that I covered that.
Mm-hmm.
Move on to the next question. Do you have a written plan for any monies from the CARES Act? Great question. We don't have the money in the bank account yet. So we're in the process of going through and ensuring that we get the monies in the bank account through the different steps we have to take. Again, the governor's intent is to get it to cities, towns, and counties as quick as possible with this little red tape. But that being said, we still have applications and documents that we have to fill out. Jess had mentioned that it will be a public process engaging the citizens, department heads here at the city, and of course the city council on that objective. And you talked a little bit about some of the thoughts, and I'll turn it over to you, Jess, to add on kind of what you think that whole thing will look like, or maybe recap your earlier conversation.
Yeah, sure. So again, we don't have the dollars. We're going through a process to take a look at what this means, and all we've seen for the most part are conversations. So now we're digging into the detail about what these means. The $6.4 million CARES Act coming to the city, one-time dollars that would need to be spent for one-time purchases, looking at patrol cars, fire engines, police boats, fire boats, the equipment that requires for our public safety folks to do their jobs. And another one that's in the budget where we're hoping to get funded was a CERT vehicle. We have CERT as our volunteers in the community that assists our firefighters in times of emergency. They're also out there in all these different special events. One's handing out free water, and if you get hurt, you're going to go to their tent and they're going to take care of you. They have an old vehicle that is becoming unreliable. So those are the types of things that we're at least going to be come to mind immediately. And we'll engage the council, the public, department heads, come up with some good ideas on how these dollars could be spent. With a focus on public safety, but there is the availability for dollars to be spent on city services as a whole.
Thank you. So the next comment is more of a comment than a question, but loves all the new faces joining the coffee with the mayor and city manager. We need to continue where we can watch from home and in person. Great information that we're sharing. So thank you for that comment. And, with this pandemic, there are so many things that have changed in our lives and new efficiencies that have been found. I still look forward to the days that we can be in a room together and I can shake your hand and I can have a conversation with you and know how I can better represent you or how I can serve you. But with that being said, I also like to ensure the information goes. So I think we will have a hybrid of in-person events and then Zoom meetings at some sort of regular interval where we can engage with the public. It's obviously so important to be transparent and open and in the service to our citizens. So any way we can engage our citizens, I'm all on board for that, and we'll continue to do that. For those of you that are just joining us for the first time, though, this again is Coffee with the Mayor and City Manager, done on a monthly basis on the first Friday of every month at 8:30. Traditionally, we move about the community to showcase different areas that you, the taxpayers, pay for, that you might not use otherwise or go into. So we've been hosted by the library, by the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, at the Aquatic Center, the police department, fire stations, public works. So we've been all over. Not all those facilities are local city ran facilities, but nonetheless, they're paid for by you, the taxpayer. So whether it's a federal facility, a county facility, a state facility, or a city facility, it's still your money. And we give you behind the scenes access to these facilities to meet with the individuals that run the facilities and staff the facilities, and also to be able to see how your dollars are being spent. So I look forward again to those days that we can do that. But we will continue to engage with our citizens in this format as well. So thank you for that comment. And the next question is, what are you doing to support public safety by building another fire station for Cherry Tree area? It's been reported that the current response time would be 20 minutes. The city already has bought the land on Sloop to build the fire station, and 20-minute response times are unacceptable to our citizens. So thank you for that question. Lake Havasu City just hired a new fire chief. Chief Pete Palafis just joined us. His family just moved here over the last week, and we're so glad to have him. Has great energy, really a nice asset to our team. And he'll be doing a very thorough overview of the city's operation when it comes to fire service and EMS services, and make his recommendations. But Jess, I'll turn it over to you since this is under your purview.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And it's a good point too in terms of that property that was purchased by the city of Sloop and McCulloch, many years ago. In terms of the ability to move forward on that, I mean, the purchase of the land is by far the cheapest component tied to the construction and operation of a fire station. So, for us to take a look at that, we'd have to look at some alternative revenues to look at that. But however, I think what the main point here is alluded to 20-minute response times. Our average response time is right at real close to 6 minutes. We have some pretty wonky streets in Havasu, and I look at some of the analogies there. It looks like a spaghetti bowl when you look at a map, right? So that has an impact there too. But more so, what do we do for our response times? And that's really what we're trying to get at too. And remember that AMR is the ambulance company here in Lake Havasu City. So first and foremost, we need to hold them accountable for their response times for service, for medical, right? And so we have continuing conversations. Chief Palafis, as you indicated, has been with the city here just for a short period of time, has hit the ground running, including some conversations already with AMR, the private sector ambulance service that's in Lake Havasu City. What else can we do? We can take a look at all of our location of all of our fire stations and look at our ability to run from those stations. So maybe there's 2 sets of crews out of those stations. Maybe we right now we run 1 alternative response vehicle. Maybe we need 2 or 3. So we're looking at all those types of things as well too. And we've had some initial conversations in previous months and with the Chief Palafis about if AMR or the private sector ambulance company isn't doing their job, then maybe the city should take a close look at what those costs would be tied to us getting into that business as the city run ambulance. I don't know what that looks like, if that's at a large cost to the residents, or if that would be a break even in Denver, or the ability for us to raise some dollars to supplement other costs within in the fire department. But those are things that we're taking a look at. The goal isn't necessarily to build a fire station on a piece of land the city bought. Maybe that's the best solution. But the goal is how do we reduce response times in the community? And there's a few things that we can do that to accomplish that. And so that's been the approach so far. Is we want to improve services, and what's the best way to do that? So we're evaluating all those different options with Chief Palafas in the lead as he gains and gathers information. He was in my office last week. He was very excited about working with our GIS team, which is our map folks, our interactive map folks, where we can include all the different calls in Lake Havasu City for fire or medical response times in the fire department. We put those all in a map, and we can look at where the calls are coming at, what the response times are per station, and then we can even project what future calls would look like and where stations would need to be. Again, all of this is done because we want to make sure we're minimizing response time from all different angles. So there's a lot to it. It's not simply just buying or building a station. But maybe that is the best route. But there's a whole lot more we can do as well too. So.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the question. The next, again, is a comment, not so much a question, but thank you for continuing the coffee with the mayor and city manager. Very informative. You are welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is what is so important to us, is to engage with our citizens to ensure that we have your perspective and input as we navigate through our community. Next is a follow-up question. So back to the planned peaceful protest. So you're saying that the permit process means nothing as long as you're gathering is stated to be a protest. I think I want to have a biker party in town. I'll call it a protest to avoid the permit process. No, that's not what we're saying. So there are certain events that require a permit. And in this case, for the peaceful protest, an application was submitted. We didn't know what it was, and but a permit was not issued, nor would we issue this. But it was good that we were able to gather some intelligence and information on what the intentions were and what that might look like for us. So we're not saying that. We're just asking that that folks do the right thing and we'll be able to move forward. I don't know, Jess, if you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I guess just talking about the difference, as you indicated, between a special event like a motorcycle party, and if that does happen, please invite me. I love it. But I think that all joking aside is that we have a special event process. We go through hundreds of applications for special events that occur through the city that require some type of use of city services, whether that's a road closure or some type of service coming from our public works, police, fire, in preparation of all that. So use of park space, those types of things too. So if a bar puts on an event and doesn't require an extension of premises or a closure of a street or all those types of things, they hold their event. If somebody wants to gather in the park and hold up a sign as protected by the Constitution, they have the ability to do that. If somebody wants to hold an event where it's going to require a street closure or access to the parks or something that would essentially utilize city services or impact the public in that regard, then they're required to fill out a special event process. So two distinct, different processes.
Thank you. All right, we are coming to the end of our Coffee with the Mayor and City Manager. Thank you all for being here, but we always end every Coffee with the Mayor and City Manager with fun facts. So since we have new people that don't generally attend our Coffee with the Mayor, I'm going to do a mixture of new fun facts and then some old fun facts that are there. But before we do that, again, today's Friday, June 5th, 2020, and you're watching Coffee with the Mayor and City Manager here in Lake Havasu City. Earlier in the coffee, we were joined by Chief Doyle, and he talked about the city's response, specifically the police department's response to the planned peaceful protests that are occurring or planned to occur this weekend here in Lake Havasu City. He has a robust plan that he has been working with his team to ensure that the safety of our citizens and also allowing those to exercise their constitutional rights at the same time. So I just ask that we as a community be kind, and we end every council meeting with that, since we proclaimed Kindness Day in Lake Havasu City. But please understand where people are coming from and people's different parts or different points of view. there are factors that are trying to divide us as a community and tear us apart. Let's not let that happen. We are one community. We are Lake Havasu City. What makes us so special starts in the early days of Robert McCulloch, to the days of all of our early pioneers that helped build our community, to all of us that live here today that continue to build our community and volunteer hundreds of hours and go to school with our neighbors' children and all of these things. Don't forget that's who we are. That's Lake Havasu City. And let's come together as one Lake Havasu City and ensure that we have better days ahead of us. So please be respectful throughout this weekend, be kind, and the police department, they got it. We have the finest men and women that are going to be protecting us. So please be kind. All right, going on to fun facts. Census first, that'll be my first one. These are the new ones, and then I'll go back to some fun ones we've had over the years. So generally this would be an interactive process, of course, but I don't want Jess answering the questions. So I'll still kind of go in the same format and then I'll give you the answer. So what are 3 ways to complete the US Census? And now people would yell out the answers, but I'll just give them to you. You can do it online, which is the easiest and quickest, by mail or by phone. Now, if you don't do anything, census workers are still coming to knock on your door. So get one of those 3 activities done before you have someone knocking on the door. The next one is, does the census impact taxes? So the taxes you already paid into the state of Arizona are distributed back to cities and counties based on census population. So an accurate census count helps to keep taxes low here in Lake Havasu City. So when you're filling out the census, you are helping schools, public safety, charities and nonprofits, because a lot of grants are determined based on census data that are grants from all sorts of organizations. So all of our charities and nonprofits that rely on the grant process for things. Business attraction, we talked a little bit about that, where all of those things that you want to see in our community, the very first thing that people look at is census data. It helps with roads to ensure that our share of gas taxes come back to our community, to ensure our roads are taken care of. It also helps with parks and libraries. And then the last one on census is, does the census impact congressional and legislative districts? And the answer is yes. And Arizona is slated to get a couple of, or at least one additional Congress person based on population, which means another state's losing one. But we fully anticipate that, and that'll give us more representation in the U.S. Congress. Now we'll go to some fun facts citywide, because we, like I said, we have some new viewers, which I think will find this stuff fairly interesting. We have coming from the airport. Believe it or not, there are approximately 45,000 takeoff and landings at our airport. That's an average of nearly 125 takeoff and landings. Shocking numbers. The reuse customers used 590 million gallons of reuse in a year, and that's 369 million flushes of a low flow toilet. 369 million flushes 1 year. Kind of interesting. Public Works raises and lowers 53 flags for high wind advisories and special occasions. So there's 53 flagpoles throughout our community that are on city-owned property or city-controlled areas that our Public Works team takes care of when we need to put them at half-mast or take them up, take them down because of wind. So great work to the team out at Public Works. Just things you don't even think about. That's why these are fun, fast facts. The Senior Center, which not a city facility, but a facility nonetheless that many of our citizens use, they have over 100 dedicated volunteers working over 25,910 hours in support of the Senior Center last year. Again, those are volunteers that are doing that. So let's do the breakdown of a ticket in closing, because we have a hard stop at 10 o'clock. But the breakdown of a ticket, which is very interesting, is that the majority of the funds collected for a speeding ticket issued by the Lake Havasu City Police Department in the city goes to the state of Arizona. So again, the majority of those monies go to the state, not to the city. 47% goes to the city and 53% go to the state of Arizona. And so when people are saying, hey, come put a police officer down on my street, the city would make a killing. It doesn't really work like that. So we do traffic enforcement throughout our community in different areas to ensure that all of our roadways are safe. So, and then just because it's on the same piece of paper, also, did you know that roughly 7% of your total property tax bill, so 7% of the entire bill is what goes to the city. It's the lowest amount on that property tax bill, with other taxes going to other very important causes that taxpayers have distributed by, such as schools, colleges, TV districts, library districts, and the like. But only 7% comes to Lake Havasu City, representing about 4.9 million of our total budget. So important, but a smaller number when it comes to the overall budget of Lake Havasu City. So in closing, it's always a pleasure to serve you, the citizens of Lake Havasu City, as your mayor. If I can ever be of any assistance, please let me know. The city stands ready to serve you. Just, I don't know if you have a couple of closing statements, or you just want to say goodbye.
I can't compete with the eloquent statement that you provided. I think it's important. I mean, be kind, be nice, and if we are able to do that, the magic of Havasu city will long live. So with that, thanks everybody. It's good to see you through this forum, and I look forward to more opportunities. And again, be kind. Let's be nice to each other. Let's help each other out.
Thank you, and again, thank you for joining us. And we look forward to the days we can be together. And if not, we will see you back on the screen. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you.